Wala pa po tayong impormasyon kung ito po bang ay related po sa Digamo case, but based on the information provided to us ay may isa nga po tayong informant at isang witness na nagsasabi at nagbigay nga po ng impormasyon na meron nga pong mga itinatago na mga matataas na kalibre ng barel dito nga po sa nasabing compound.
From the nation's capital, all sides, all the time, I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. The big story tonight.
Some of the country's biggest business groups are pushing back against the proposal in Congress to amend the 1987 Constitution.
That's despite lawmakers claiming that the proposed charter change aims to focus only on removing restrictive economic provisions in the charter. Here is what we know. At least 6 groups, led by the Makati Business Club, have expressed opposition against charter change. They issued an appeal to the Senate to stand its ground against House Bill 7352. Now, in their statement, the groups note that political debate on Chacha can derail recently enacted laws and regulations that can already achieve substantial economic gains. The groups say that measures like the Public Service Act and Foreign Investment Act are already enough to address constitutional provisions that impede trade and economic and job growth. The groups also say the measure could also turn off potential investors, emphasizing that they are looking for stability as the world faces serious economic headwinds. They believe the possible lengthy and fractious process of amending the Constitution may make investors take a wait-and-see attitude, which could derail the impact of recent reforms.
Business groups also remind Congress that they have yet to pass at least 2 more tax reform bills and other measures that can enhance government revenue and job creation. They note that the financial cost, likewise, of a constitutional convention, as proposed by the lower house, is too high, and they cite NEDA's estimate of 14 to 28 billion pesos. The groups say funds are better spent on pro-people programs like building more farm-to-market roads or raising the spending on the National Rice Program. Now, earlier today, House Speaker Martin Romualdez said the chamber will be sticking to its push for a constitutional convention. This comes a day after later Representative Richard Gomez claimed that the Speaker had agreed to a constitutional assembly, which proponents say would be cheaper than CONCON. Still, the House Speaker said the House is open to talk with the Senate on its preference on charter change. To discuss these latest developments on the push for charter change, we have with us on the show Northern Samar Representative Paul Dasa is joining us on the line. Sir, welcome to the big story.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Sir, the consensus seems to be for proponents that look, let's deal with the charter specifically and limiting, hopefully, on economic provisions to make us friendlier to investments and to further boost the economy. But here you have the main stakeholders of the business sector and the economy saying, we don't need it, it's a waste of time, it's a waste of resources. What are your thoughts on the statements of the business community?
Well, first of all, Robbie, I'm kind of quite surprised. We had 4 committee hearings in the House. I distinctly remember Mr. Barcelon, who represents at least one large business group. They were in favor of charter change for economic provisions. In fact, many of the groups who came to the House were mostly in favor. So this is a new information, at least for me. And, you know, they probably have good points. But what we did in the House, because I was one of the few members initially that wanted charter change through CONCON Assembly and not CONCON. But the discussion, I remember, was to pass something, which we did, to trigger the national debate on it and to trigger a discussion with the Senate. So, you know, that's part of democracy. If the Makati Business Club and other groups think it's not necessary, then their voice should be heard. But we've done our work in the House. It's already approved. And really, that information, Robbie, will be very germane to the Senate debate and committee hearings and debate.
Okay, then let's get, sir, to some of the specific points. They're saying, for example, Public Service Act, you passed it. Now let's see how it works, how it benefits, give it some momentum. They're saying, the business groups have long been saying also that sa totoo lang, the biggest concern for investors are corruption, transparency, also ease of doing business. And they're saying we don't need to change the Constitution for all of these things. And most importantly, they're now also saying if we go to a constitutional convention or cha-cha, this will take some time. So everything that we are trying to do loses momentum. Everything stops in its tracks because foreign investors will take a wait-and-see attitude on what happens to the Constitution. What do you say to that?
Well, first of all, the Public Service Act, even though it meant well, was really a Band-Aid approach. And that was one of the good arguments that I had heard. Because, in fact, I've been told someone, or if they haven't, will question that in the Supreme Court. And even with the Public Service Act, it left many industries with the restrictive conditions against foreigners. Transmission and distribution of power is still considered a public utility. Educational institutions, media, there's still a few major industries that's not covered by the Public Service Act. So that didn't really solve everything. And that's why there was merit to the argument that once and for all, let's push the issue now while it's early because, if this discussion was happening, let's say, towards the latter part of the presidency, the talk will be, people will be saying it's vested interest, no election, and all that stuff. That's why it was a little persuasive, at least for me, to have this discussion early on. I respect those opinions, but the Public Service Act, to be honest with you, if you look into the details, was a Band-Aid solution. Now, you're correct. There are many other issues, problems that's facing us. In fact, part of the 23 bills we passed included addressing some of those. On the ease of doing business, in fact, I'm going to file remedial legislation that will help the anti-red tape authority. The Speaker supported arguments to file a better strengthening the law on anti-red tape and ease of doing business. As you know, we passed a amendments to the BOT law. We are now considering in committee on revisions of law where, in fact, we're working so hard. I think we've got 3 TWGs for hours and hours to look into the 9184, which is the procurement law, how that can be improved to even lessen and mitigate any possible corruption in bidding. So we're working on all those issues in fairness to the House, and I'm part of that. As you know, I'm in a minority. I'm very vocal when we see something that we think is not right. I encourage the debate. I appreciate the business group saying it now. I wish they went to the committee and if we heard those arguments, maybe we wouldn't have passed the Con bill. But it's now passed. It's now water under the bridge. That discussion will now be focused in the Senate.
Okay, time and time again, we see proposals to amend the Constitution in past administrations. Why do you think it's the perfect time to do that now as we are recovering from the pandemic? And taking a look at the history of charter change, it has been received well at the lower house. How do you think it will do this time at the Senate?
Well, I spoke to Senator Robin Padilla about 3 weeks ago. At that time, his position was, at least to me, we were speaking at an event, and I felt the same way he did, which is let's go all out on the economic provisions, nothing on political provisions. And he wanted a constituent assembly. At that time, he said no on convention. So I think there's a possibility that if it's a constituent assembly, which is definitely, I agree, much cheaper, it will be faster, and it will be more transparent in the sense that whatever the House and the Senate will vote on will be crystal clear. Whereas in a convention, you don't know where they're going to go. And the Speaker said he's open, so I was happy to hear that. And that's what I was really hoping, was that there will be debates on this early on, because, as I said, Gretchen, there's never a perfect time. If we were discussing this towards, closer to an election time, people will be saying, politika na lang yan, extend yung term, no election. So this is, I think, a good time to talk details, to talk on merit. And, I'm glad this show is tackling that, because it's a very important issue for all of us.
Sir, just one last question. What's with the confusion on the preferred modality of the House of Representatives? Just yesterday, Congressman Richard Gomez was saying that they were now on the same page as Senator Robin Hood Padilla for Chacha, and now the Speaker himself denying that and saying, no, we'll stick with our guns on Con.
Well, I can't speak for Gomez, but I read the article that the Speaker himself was quoted saying he will stick to Con, but he's open. So that in itself is good news, because my position and my advocacy with the Speaker and my colleagues is, let's wait what the Senate will do, and then let's be open. Because, Robbie, Gretchen, as you know, the parliamentary procedure is, when our bill is different from the Senate, we are required to form a bicameral conference committee, and then they will reconcile it. So that it's good news to hear that the Speaker is open, because I personally, even though I voted yes for a Con, because I wanted to trigger that national debate and I didn't want to vote no and be misinterpreted, I'm glad that the Speaker's open, because I really think still the better way is the Con Assembly and focus on the economic provisions.
Okay, maraming salamat po. That was Northern Samar Representative Paul Dasa. The Agriculture Department is considering implementing a suggested retail price of 90 pesos per kilo for sugar. That's on the back of some retailers continuing to sell sugar for as much as 110 pesos per kilo in the market, despite the arrival of imported supply. The SRA board says, however, that it cannot price imported sugar too low, as then that would affect the profit of local producers. The DA says it still has to meet with stakeholders to finalize the proposed SRP. Meanwhile, David Alba, the chief of the Sugar Regulatory Administration, has resigned amid issues hounding the country's sugar importation. But the SRA denies that Alba was a sacrificial lamb in the latest sugar mess. Shiloh Francisco with this report.
7 months after his appointment, Sugar Regulatory Administration Chief David Alba has stepped down from his post. The palace confirmed that they have received Alba's resignation. The Presidential Communications Office reported that Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin initially persuaded Alba not to resign. However, Alba stood firm with his decision, citing his worsening health conditions. With this, his resignation will be effective on April 15 upon the instruction of President Bongbong Marcos. Prior to the palace's confirmation, Sugar Board member Pablo Ascona said that they found out about Alba's resignation during a meeting last Monday.
We were all actually surprised with the presentation po of a copy of his letter. Yung inexplain po sa amin ng DA is it was because of his health. He was having problems with his blood pressure.
Alba's resignation came amid the controversial Sugar Order No. 6, or the importation of 440,000 metric tons of sugar. But the SRA was quick to clarify that it has nothing to do with the issue.
Yung lumalabas na issues, lahat inaccept naman po ni Yusek Panganiban nung last press briefing niya po. And then so far hindi ko pa naman narinig or nabasa po na si Admin Dave po yung kini-question.
For its part, the Department of Agriculture assures the public that lowering sugar prices remains to be a priority despite Alba's resignation.
Patuloy pa rin naman yan eh. You gotta stop. You gotta stop its operation. Especially right now na yung sugar is one of the drivers of inflation. So, ang take ko dyan is that we have the sugar supply, we have the buffer stock to address the high prices in the market.
Shaila Francisco, we are One News.
The Bureau of Customs reported several more drug busts this week. The BOC Port of Clark recently turned over various seized marijuana byproducts with an estimated value of 120 million pesos to the PIDEA Region 3 for proper disposition. Authorities discovered the derivatives in 10 shipments, which included cannabidiol and vape products. These also included bottles of Terp Science Labs containing marijuana and tablets containing codeine and acetaminophen. Meanwhile, the BOC, NAIA, and other drug authorities arrested the claimant after discovering shabu hidden inside a parcel. The subject shipment was found to contain 4 packs of white crystalline substances concealed inside the cylindrical aluminum receptacle labeled as Universal Engine. These seized substances have an estimated street value of over 3.4 million pesos. And coming right up, the CIDG seizes more weapons in a sugar mill that belongs to the Tevis family. More updates on that when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News. The big story here on One News. Philippines and China are hoping to come up with an agreement soon to address maritime concerns from both countries. Day 2 of bilateral consultations began with China acknowledging the need to discuss certain issues. However, the Chinese Foreign Ministry insists that friendly dialogue should prevail. The ministry said that during President Bongbong Marcos's visit to China, both countries reached a consensus not to let disputes affect overall relations. The Department of Foreign Affairs said it hopes to tackle specific concerns and come up with a resolution in its meeting with Chinese counterparts today. Both sides are seeking to finalize a code of conduct in the South China Sea.
As in the past years, we intend to discuss in a frank manner issues of concern and will endeavor to identify mutually acceptable approaches towards addressing these issues.
Police raided another property supposedly owned by former Negros Oriental Governor Henry Tevis. Elaine Fulgencio with the details.
high-powered firearms, boxes of ammunition, and wads of cash. This is what police stumbled upon in a sugar mill in the town of Santa Catalina, Negros Oriental. The property called HDJ Bayawan Agri-Venture Tolong Compound is allegedly owned by former Governor Henry Pride Tevis, brother of embattled Congressman Arnie Tevis. The alleged owner, however, was not in the compound when the CIDJ conducted its search.
Meron na po kaming nakita ng mga firearms, siguro not less than 10 including the pistols. Long firearms ang nakita ko, mga tatlo. There are ammunition. Actually, merong ammunition for 9mm, 45, 5.56, and merong mga bala ng shotgun, although I don't know if we have already found shotgun. And there are bullets or ammo for, they say, M14.
Earlier this month, police searched several properties belonging to the Tevis family over reports of loose firearms. And just like last time, authorities took into custody several persons found in possession of the weapons. Operatives also seized some 17 million pesos from the vault in the milling compound. According to the PNP, former Governor Henry Tevis could face complaints if the seized firearms are unregistered.
Kasama po yung kanyang pangalan doon sa application po for search warrant dahil ito nga pong itong corporation po na ito ay tumatayo pong presidente nitong corporation si Mr. Henry Pride Tevis po.
But a PNP clarifies that this latest raid has nothing to do with the Digamo case in which Kong Arnie Tevis has been implicated. The National Police said that it is only acting on a tip from informants and on the basis of an earlier complaint against Congressman Tevis over murders committed in 2019.
Wala pa po tayong informasyon kung ito po bang ay related po sa Digamo case, but based on the information provided to us ay may isa nga po tayong informant at isang witness na nagsasabi at nagbigay nga po ng impormasyon na meron nga pong mga itinatago na mga matataas na kalibre ng barel dito nga po sa nasabing compound.
As of writing, the Tevis family has yet to issue a statement over the raid. Their camp earlier claimed that there were irregularities in the seizure conducted by the CIDG earlier this month when they were supposedly barred from observing the search operations. Reporting for News 5, Elaine Fulgencio, We Are One News.
After the break, it's definitely getting hotter here in the Philippines. Let's discuss when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News.
You're still watching The Big Story here on One News. Cleanup operations continue along shores in Oriental Mindoro amid favorable weather. The Philippine Coast Guard laid out absorbent pads where oil can seep through. The Coast Guard also inspected coastal areas along Verde Island that are deemed most at risk of accumulating oil slick. Meanwhile, the spill has yet to reach the neighboring town of Puerto Galera, contrary to earlier projections by the UP Marine Science Institute. Town Mayor Rocky Ilagan says the inaccurate forecast has affected their tourism. He also threatened to sue the institute over this.
Nagdadalawang isip ang mga turista na dito sa amin pumunta. Pag ganitong naglalabas ang MSI nang hindi naman sila sigurado, nagmumukhang talagang manghuhula lang talaga din sila.
Meanwhile, the UP-MSI insists that they're only doing their job in alerting the public ahead of possible impact from the oil spill. The institute also explained that their projections are subject to change depending on several factors.
Nagbago yung aming projection kasi po nagbago din yung lakas ng hangin. So, humina po ang hangin-amihan. Unfortunately, ang direction shifted northwards naman, towards the area over the island passage. Yung mga bago pong oil na nilalabas ng ating tanker, ang new oil leaks na currently being formed, ito po, ang direction nito ay towards the north, towards the Verde Island passage.
More than 100 students were taken to different hospitals during a surprise fire drill in school in Cabuyao City, Laguna. The cause? Hunger and dehydration. According to Mayor Dennis Hain, around 3,000 students of Gulod National High School, Mamatid Extension, were gathered around 12:30 p.m. where a fire drill was conducted at around 2 p.m. The students were asked to proceed to an open evacuation area and then to some classrooms. However, the heat index in the city was around 39 to 42 degrees Celsius, causing students to feel dizzy and to faint. Mayor Hain said he has already ordered a temporary suspension for all fire drills in both public and private schools in the city. Parents, however, are furious about what happened to their children.
Ay hindi po na-coordinate sa barangay, sa CDRMO, sa mayor's office. Kaya hindi po handa. Meron talagang konting lapses ho na nangyari.
Gusto ko ng administrative complaint laban doon sa principal. Ang gusto ko po ay mawala siya dito sa aming eskwelahan.
And that's the big story tonight. For more updates, follow News 5, the Philippine Star, and Business World Online. You may also log on to onenews.ph for more analysis. Ako po si Robbie Alampay.
The big story is also available via Signal Play app. Make a free account now at signalplay.com and stream One News anytime, anywhere. Ako po si Gretchen Ho. Stay safe, Philippines.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.